Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. It's okay, I have a screen protector. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about Sebenzai. Not Sebenzai, Sebenzai. Like Sebenza. So, okay, Sebenzai is a mobile game that creates jobs in Africa. And basically, it's mobile-first data labeling for machine learning. And this is a deep learning conference, so you can pretend it's for deep learning only. But most machine learning is deep learning these days. So, as Annika said, I started a company called Number Boost. This was around 3 years ago, and we do a lot of consulting, really. And we won a bunch of awards, locally and internationally, and basically, all of our projects pretty much go the same way. We get a bunch of data, we spend around 5% of the time getting the data, putting models into production, doing any actual machine learning, and most of the time, we spend labeling and cleaning data. And really, most of it is just labeling and cleaning data. And we built a bunch of tools to make this faster, and we got it to be a little bit easier than other people probably find it, but it's still a big pain, and really it's just very time consuming. So I'll go over some of the kinds of things we've been working on to give you some context. We're doing some interesting work in mining. So this is one of the biggest quarries in Africa, and trucks are queuing up to come inside and pick up products. And they need to have paid for the product in advance. So the camera is actually attached to a security office, and the truck comes up, and they're supposed to come between the concrete booms. That's where they're supposed to come. There's a weigh bridge, like a giant scale, when they drive between the concrete booms, and they get weighed empty and then weighed full. And of course, the difference between those weights must be like what they paid for to pick up. And if they take the side roads, that's an anomaly. They're not supposed to take the side roads. And there's a whole lot of other anomalies, like they're not supposed to come at night. If they take the wrong product, that's an anomaly. So we have a bunch of cameras, and we're kind of trying to detect these anomalies using computer vision. And we detect what product it is and compare that to what they ordered. And we have a dashboard. So it's kind of like an inbox. Their ops team every morning goes through the dashboard, and they resolve anomalies. And there's an audit trail and so on. And we SMS the manager in real time. Anomaly! Red alert, stop them. And then before the truck has an opportunity to leave, they can go and do something about it. And we make mistakes sometimes, so that's a false positive. That looks like a truck on the bypass, but it's not a truck, it's a water truck. And water trucks are allowed on the bypass, because that's actually owned by the mining company themselves. And if we alert every time that happens, they're not going to be very happy. So we have this feedback mechanism so that they can tell us when we're wrong, but getting it right in the first place requires labeling lots of data. We also do some work in retail. So here, basically, I don't want anyone to get triggered about assuming anyone's gender or anything. Very rough guess as to age and gender of people walking past, and then they go green when they look at the shop window. And we tally who looks at the window and who comes inside, basically. And I just got back from Tokyo. This is crazy next level in Asia. So from the back of the store, walking to the front of the store, in less than 60 seconds, if you count the cameras, there's it's crazy. There are 27 cameras in less than 60 seconds. And this was an 8-floor store, and there were the same number on each floor. Okay? And I promise you, no one is watching all of this video. It's just impossible. And in fact, most video acts as a sort of time machine. Something happens, and then you rewind and watch what happened. But if someone was watching it, you can do a lot of interesting things. Sometimes, life-saving things, or just theft and related saving things. There are privacy concerns too. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But we also do some work outside of video surveillance. So we won a competition with Mercedes-Benz and built a system where you essentially take a photo of each part of a car, and we turn the car into a JSON object, because then you can diff the JSON object today and next week and be like, oh, well, here's some new damage that wasn't there previously. And again, there's a feedback mechanism in case we get it wrong. That's especially interesting in the context of car rental, because if you think about a centralized car rental model like Avis or Hertz, there's a car rental agency at the airport, and there's a guy there who like walks around your car with that. That's like actually in 2019 how they do vehicle inspections. And it's kind of crazy. And it also doesn't work in a decentralized car rental model. So if you think about Zipcar or Car2Go, these, instead of you going to the car rental agency, the cars are just scattered around, and you open your app and it's like, go that way, and then you unlock it with a QR code, and the key's in the car, and then you drive away. But there's no one there to do an inspection. So they basically load an insurance premium into the price. And so if you can accurately detect and price damage, you can lower prices on the car rental. We also do something similar, and this was basically copy-pasting the Mercedes thing, but for infrastructure. And we won this thing in London in December with the biggest infrastructure company in Scandinavia. And basically, people go and they do work on infrastructure. So that's an electrical cabinet, and they might go and connect a new cable or put in a fuse, and they take a photo. And then they upload it to a job reporting system, and their boss looks at the photo, and then they tell them if they had a mistake or like did something wrong. So in this case, they didn't put fuse covers on, and there was like a little bit of trash left in the box. And they submit the photo, but the boss looks at it like tomorrow or 2 days later. And then if there's a problem, they have to drive all the way back, which costs money, and there's opportunity cost. But also, sometimes these problems are life-threatening. Like if someone touches a cable, they can properly die, and this has happened. So same story, need lots of labeled data to do this. Basically, they use our system to take photos and do the job reporting, but instead of waiting for the manager to look at it, we do real-time AI, like error detection, using fairly off-the-shelf computer vision, and then gluing a whole lot of things together, and most importantly, labeling lots of data. So I really hope my sound is working, because this is one of my favorite videos, in like a twisted, weird way. But it's just like such a crazy video, and very South African. Hopefully you can hear this. I wish it came through the HDMI, but yeah.
That's 2 now.
Genius.
That's 3.
Has anyone seen this?
4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
So that's a 16-seater minibus taxi. There's not supposed to be more than 16 people in that taxi.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21.
They're not even halfway.
23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 46, and with the front seat.
There's 48, basically. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. And I don't know how, even, because like, it's like a magic trick where they're like running around the taxi and then getting, or like, the taxi's Narnia or something. If this thing crashes, that's like a whole school dead. So that's a problem. And so we have this project that we're allegedly working on. If you're with the Taxi Association or something, I have no idea what this project's about. But apparently how it works is like we just detect the people and then track the same person across frames by basically just calculating the distance from one frame to the previous one to the nearest box. And if it's within a radius, then assign it the same ID, and the ID is just random. Well, incremental, but doesn't mean anything. And then if they start outside and then they disappear inside, we increment the in count, or someone increments the in count, and vice versa for out. And then when we no longer detect the taxi there, then we essentially have converted that time of video into a JSON object. Now, what's interesting about this and the mining thing is initially we were streaming terabytes of video. And that doesn't work, and it makes people angry if you're using the network. But it's also bad for privacy. Like if we're running all this computation in AWS or something and we get hacked, that's a big problem. And so the way we do it is we have this like framework, and we get a couple days of video. We label all the video using Sebenzai, which I'll show you now. And then we train a model, and we give them the model. And then the model runs on their infrastructure. And they no longer send us video, and we delete the data. And there's also ways that we label the data and get it in the first place in a way that's private, but I'll talk about that now. Also, this is like one of the biggest video analytic companies in the world solution. This like part of the camera thing. And yeah, it's not good at all. And the point is that off-the-shelf models do not work in general, but especially in Africa. And so if you want to train a custom model, as I mentioned, you need to label loads of data. So has anyone heard of the mechanical Turk? Some people. So this is sort of like used for two main things. A true story about an 18th century fake chess-playing machine, and Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is a crowdsourcing marketplace. So the actual Turk, like the original OG Turk, was a fake chess-playing machine from the 18th century that defeated Napoleon and Benjamin Franklin at chess. So chess-playing robot in the 1800s, 1800s, that's like long before Deep Blue and electricity. And so how? Like what? And basically they showed this mechanism, but in fact, there was a false compartment with a very small chess-playing expert controlling a puppet. So you could say that this is artificial intelligence. Now, Amazon Mechanical Turk is a crowdsourcing internet marketplace where you can get people to be Turkers for you. Not turkeys, Turkers. And basically, it's an HTML form where you say, do something, like draw a box around the damage in the vehicle in this photo. And then you pay them, and Amazon gets a cut. And turns out that ImageNet, which I'm sure you've all heard of, was labeled by 50,000 mechanical Turkers. And there's 28% unemployment in South Africa. And you can't actually work on Mechanical Turk as a South African. So we were doing a whole lot of data labeling through mTurk because we just didn't have capacity. And then I was like, shit, we're basically outsourcing simple work to people in like America and Bangladesh. And that's crazy. So Sebenzai means work in isiXhosa and isiZulu. And Sebenz.ai looks like that. So it's two things. It's a sort of user side where you can earn money on your smartphone, and a client side where you can get data labeled, and we'll also train models and then give them to you. So the user side. This is what it looks like. There's a scoreboard and it's gamified. And you basically just tap to draw annotations on the people near the taxi. But basically whatever you want to do, we give people tasks to do. And come find me later and I'll show it to you on my phone. But I'll talk a lot more about that shortly. But basically it's artificial intelligence creating instead of taking jobs. And that's also interesting because the minimum wage here and the cost of living is much lower than other countries, so we can arbitrage the cost of data capturing and data labeling work, where an Italian company will be paying like €5 an hour, and people would be only too happy to be making like $2 or $3 an hour here. And the client side looks like that. So you just, it's still in like private beta, so not all of it actually works, but you just select what kind of task type you want, and really it's like what kind of data do you want to get annotated, and then you upload your data and we give you the annotations, and we'll also train a model for you if you want. And we'll host it too. So let's look at some examples. So image description is just like, here's an image, let me ask you to describe the product below, and you just write out what it says. Or text translation, we give you text in one language and you write it out in another. Or document digitization. So here's where some of the privacy stuff gets interesting, because you can't just take someone's medical aid application form and like show it to some guy in Bangladesh or someone in South Africa, because it's got private data on it. But if you digitally shred the document into small pieces so that no one ever sees more than like 4 or 5 characters, and I take a form that's got like my Bitcoin public and private key, my ID number, my HIV status, I can like just cut that up into small pieces, give it to everyone in this room. And because you don't see any context, it's sort of private, or like not a security risk for me if it's implemented properly. So here's an example. That's not my actual credit card number, but suppose it is. We can first run an OCR process offline, and that returns a confidence for each sort of word block. And we only actually have to show the low confidence fragments to people. And then they type out what it says, we recombine it back together again, and we can give you the result. And in fact, we can give you the thing that shreds the document so that I never see the whole document. Which, if you're using like the Google OCR API or something, you're just trusting them with your data. And the same thing for audio transcription. So you can take an audio file and essentially get the non-silent parts, but segment them such that it's like max 5 seconds per piece or 3 seconds per piece, because, and then show this to different people. Because each piece won't contain a whole lot of private data, so that could be my credit card number, but because you only hear a very small part of it, and everyone's like randomly allocated these pieces, we can do human level accuracy for these kinds of things in a way that's secure and you don't need to trust anyone. Now there's also some sort of like better ways to do annotation. That this is this great work out of Google research that makes sort of like pixel segmentation easier to do. We haven't really started doing any of this, but it looks cool. Now there's a crazy documentary, PBS documentary called The Cleaners that I strongly urge you all to watch. It starts off with the legal counsel from Facebook, Google, and Twitter getting grilled by these like Luddite legal people in court. And it's funny because basically they're asking them like, how did you not like stop these ISIS videos? Or like, how did you, the New Zealand video, 20% of it did not get moderated. And knowing something about machine learning and video and things like that, like it's just not possible. It's just not possible to moderate it all, because you can generate millions of hours of video, and if you have humans watching it, you just can't. It's not, and the models aren't good enough, and I don't think they will be. So,
hundreds of beheadings.
And it's super sad, because this person in this documentary is like, I've seen hundreds of beheadings. Because they're watching all of this content that's getting uploaded, and it's basically like a digital sweatshop. I mean, this guy says that their target is 25,000 images per day to moderate, which if you work for 8 hours flat, that's 1.1 seconds per image. And part of why they have these sweatshops is because they have like a metal detector and they take your electronics, so you can't take photos and leak the data. But if you construct it in a way that you don't have to worry about that, then you don't have to pay for the office or the managers, and people can work from home, which means they make more money and have more empowerment and control over their lives. So trustless, I mean, I mentioned some of the things that you can do around digital shredding, but the taxi one is interesting because if you look at the original video, it's high res and you can see someone's face, but we just make it low res so that you can't. And we do that like before we send the data anywhere. So like you don't need high res to draw a box around someone's head. And accuracy is a big question here, because when we were doing Mechanical Turk, it was terrible. Like you can't trust any of these labels. And it was like freaking me out to where I was like, no more Mechanical Turk, we're just gonna do this ourselves. And like I'm paying engineers lots of money, and like they're not Mechanical Turks, you know, like, and there's so many people who would love a job. So But accuracy is a big problem. And there's a couple ways you can do this. One is all these labeling things that are going into models have loss functions, and you can calculate an accuracy against a gold standard data set. So that might be the right answer. If that's what the worker does, we can calculate a metric that tells us how accurate it is. And we can have you, who's creating the job, label like 10 examples, and then we give those to the workers, measure their accuracy, and sort of like how long it takes to get there, and then give you a quote for like hundreds of thousands of labels. But we have a gold standard data set where we can sort of measure empirically someone's accuracy. And we also do the skill-weighted consensus between workers. So you can do inter-annotator agreement, but you can do that as a sort of like skill-weighted calculation. And also, you can create incentives that make it uneconomical to do a bad job. Whereas in Turk, YOLO. Like, Turk's controlling everything and they're not doing a good job. It's like Mechanical Turk, we looked at this up yesterday, it's like 13 years old, or 14 years old, and I think it looks the same for like 14 years. So we're in the Ethereum hackathon this weekend, judged by Vitalik, which I'm super excited about. Right now, we pay the workers, well, it's still in like private beta. We pay them every Friday via EFT, but we could very well start paying them in ETH, which they could just convert straight into rands and not take ETH exposure. But I think there's also potentially an interesting way to track their skill by sort of storing their level on some like ERC 721 token or something like that. And then we'll pay them, so we base pay at least 25 Rand per hour. And if you have high skill, then we can just pay you more and only give you access to tasks that you're good at. And also, unlike Turk, we don't let you choose what tasks you do, we allocate them because we can allocate them better than you can because you don't even know what the tasks are. So yeah. And also verifying takes much less time than creating labels. So if you need to like count the fruit on a tree, that might take you 15 seconds to draw a box around all 10 apples or something. But you can look at that and in 1 second know if there's a mistake. So I think there's interesting ways you can ensure accuracy that way. But ultimately our mission is to create 1 million jobs in Africa. And I would love if anyone emailed me or wanted to use this kind of thing. So we can do it very cheap and then grandfather you in if we ever raise prices. And if you want to do like an academic use case, we just won't charge you a fee. We'll pass like everything you pay us onto the workers. And yeah, please email me. Any questions?
Cool. Do you do like a test for the workers? So if, let's say you have a requirement, obviously, that they speak the language that they need to be translating, for instance. I wonder what I'm going to use this for. Do you have that kind of functionality yet? So they can get tested? And then
yes, if you look at the sign-up form, we
yeah.
ask for their home languages.
Okay.
But also, like, we'll just give them work, and if they don't do well, then they only do the test, and then they don't do any real work.
Yeah, and then the other idea was, is there a way to, or have you thought about kind of gamifying people against each other? So you get people who are labelers and then people who are verifiers.
Yep.
And then you can play a game where you can get money for verifying as well, and then you get, yeah, I think there's something to be done there to make sure that the quality is better.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That's what we're thinking, but we haven't implemented that yet. When I say verify, is like if you've demonstrated skill at something, then you can verify their output, and we can cheaply guarantee. Like, so if we have two options, one is show 10 people, and then if 80% agree on something, that's the right answer. Yeah. Alternatively, show one person, and then get a higher paid person to quickly confirm. If not, show it to more people until you get the right answer. So yeah, we're thinking about that. Also, like ways to compete with each other, and then also on the game side, I mean. Right now, we're giving them data, but they could very well just collect the data and label it, in which case it's almost like augmented reality game where you're then getting data as well. I mean, that's what they're doing when they're reading things out and we're then training models. I mean, you only need around 10,000 hours to train a voice-to-text model, and there's no voice-to-text model, but like 10,000 hours, that's like 250 grand to create that model, and then you can like do voice-to-text medicine, and like, it's crazy it doesn't already happen.
Alex, great initiative. We chatted about it yesterday evening as well. What is the scope here? So we talk about text, video, audio, classifications. You're obviously seeding this with initial types of video material and so forth, but are you going to open it up because you get so many different types of application where you need different types of video images and all that kind of stuff, so yeah. Yeah,
great question. So basically, we don't already do it, and you'll pay us. We'll make it for you. But more generally, we have an API that's currently closed, but we intend to open that up. So you can just use this API schema to create your own tasks.
I just want to ask with regards to the shredding of the data, right? I mean, you talked about it being a way to sort of alleviate like this whole privacy issues, but are policymakers aware of this? Like, okay.
You mean like
Yeah, because I mean,
learning in general, or like that?
no, like people who actually are, people who set up stuff like GDPR, like, would they let this fly?
Yeah, I don't think they won't let it fly, but I definitely don't think they're aware of it. I mean, I was at the fourth IR thing at Parliament before I went to Tokyo, and they do seem to really care and really want to understand. I don't think they do, but if you just walk in there and you're like, okay, well, write all these things on a piece of paper, and you take out scissors and cut it up and be like, well, here's this, here's that. Like, I think you can show that it's private, but it is a bit complicated. So I'm not that confident that it'll be easy to explain and let people let you do things that are GDPR compliant. But I think you can convince companies more easily, and then I think the way GDPR is enforced is. And it's like very high penalty, so they're all worried about it, and they won't take a risk if there is a chance of leaking that data. But I think if we can convince them that there's no risk, then there's no risk. Yeah, it's too early to tell though. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're doing is not GDPR complex. I mean, labeling, and GDPR doesn't really apply here unless we're processing Europeans' data. But a lot of the stuff that we're doing is not, like if the data leaks, it's not a problem, or like we're even just labeling open source data. So it's not a huge issue now, but it will be a problem, and hopefully we can explain it succinctly in a way that they let us actually do it, because yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done where people in Europe are paying people lots of money, and we can do it here for cheaper, but also create lots of jobs. So yeah, I hope we can figure it out.
I just wanted to find out, you spoke about quite a few other things as well that you've been looking at, like the mining application and the taxi detection of a number of passengers. I was just interested in the process of how these projects come about. Do you guys identify a problem and try and solve it, or do people come to you and ask on how, like, solutions to solve these, and do they actually is there an end goal of being used by the client, or just more about that process?
Sure. So you saw we won a lot of competitions. Like, that's just a really good way to do business development, because then they're invested in actually driving a project. So, I mean, some of the things I showed were things we won in competitions. Other is, I mean, the mining thing, I gave a talk at a conference like 2 years ago, and then the CIO of that company came and was like, hey, we have this problem, can you please help us? All of those are ongoing projects. So we do a pilot, and then if there are high success metrics and they're happy, then we go ahead on an ongoing project. But it's generally like us telling them this is what you can do, and not them saying, hey, can you do this? And so there's a lot of like outreach and biz dev, which is not my favorite thing. But yeah, we're trying to be more active soon on like content marketing and writing blog posts and giving videos and stuff. But generally, the way we get projects is word of mouth, meetups, emailing people, stuff like that. So please, do an email intro if you know anyone that needs machine learning.
My question is around like business sustainability. My impression is that your team at the moment is a fairly small team. And how do you envision your team growing when you have many applications that you need to keep updating? Do you offer your business's services as a single product that once you're done developing, that's it, that's done, there's no maintenance or upgrades that are done to that system? Or how do you envision your business developing in the case that you have all these business applications that you're having to?
Well, we already have that case, so I can tell you, basically I'm really stressed all the time. Also, we have like way overkill monitoring, so I make sure to close my Slack because I get notifications like all day about like this endpoint went down, this database went down, and we like constantly ping things to make sure they're healthy. And we use this like PagerDuty style way of making sure that things are always up, but things are never always up. We just need to make sure it's not our fault when it's down, because like ESCOM or something, like it's down. So we have a lot of alerting, and then we try to build things in a way that they are just going to run. Like, and unless something breaks, it should just run. But you have to patch operating systems and stuff like that. As for scaling, we might or might not raise money. I'm hoping we can just bootstrap. The way we do it is we pre-sell API credits, so our cash flows are not like heavy, on us needing to like front all the money for the workers and then we get paid. And also, I think you'll be really surprised how much like a few smart people can do, smart and determined. Like not even that smart all the time, just determined. Like if you work like 15 hours a day and are good at like copy pasting from Stack Overflow, like you can get a lot done. So, we are hiring if you know anyone who's like good at Python. And we also might open source some of it, in which case everyone can help. That's definitely the longer term thing, but like there's too many moving parts to really do that now. Hope that answers your question.
We've actually been looking into this now for the past couple of months, and I just have a question from like a machine learning point of view, and the fact that would you allow a company to place their pre-trained models into your app, and then the workers essentially just verify, making it a quicker process, and you charge less, or is that not?
As I said to Jacques, if you'll pay us, I'll make it rainbow colored and do whatever you want. So basically, yes, to any question you have, really. But yeah, we definitely do that. Most companies don't have their own models. In fact, like what we're doing here is we're not just data labeling. Like the market for data labeling is like maybe that. People who know about how to do something with the model. But it's the same process over and over and over again. So we just have like the best state-of-the-art model that we'll just like train and then give you. So like you're definitely a niche case amongst the target market where you already have models and you want to verify. But yeah, we can just create a task where it's like, confirm there's a boxer on every apple on this tree or something. And then that'll be much cheaper because we price. So we calculate pricing based on time. We give the workers, we count how long it takes them, and then price so that they earn around 25 Rand an hour. Or more if there's more skill involved, and we try to pay them more. And we take a very small fee. Unless it's like academic or something, in which case we're happy to do it without a fee. Cool, thank you.